I want to say something that I say to almost every coaching client that I have at one time or another, and that is stay close to the money. It sounds simple, but I promise you it changes everything about how you sell. Here's what I mean. I was recently asked by a client of mine, a brilliant coach, to take a look at a marketing piece she had put together. And she works with owners of restaurants and vineyards, accomplished women, hardworking women, women who are totally drained. And the piece was beautifully written. It explained her process and her methodology and the number of sessions, everything you'd want to see. But here's what it didn't say. It didn't say what was at stake for these potential clients, that without intervention, they are at risk of losing their best employees and losing loyal clients, losing revenue, and for some of them, losing the very business that they've invested so much in. That's the money, and it wasn't anywhere in the marketing piece. I see this mistake all the time. I see it in sales conversations, in marketing pieces, on websites, and it's costing women coaches and consultants real revenue every single day. Your price is almost never the problem. Your value story is. In this video, I am going to show you exactly how to get close to the money, how to name it, how to find it, how to present your price in the context of it so it never feels too high. I'm going to walk you through 3 client examples across very different niches and ensure that you have a framework that you can apply to your own offer today. And before we dive in, I have built a revenue calculator that you can access on the link below. It only takes 2 minutes to complete, and it will really help you to understand the kind of revenue you might be leaving on the table. So what does it exactly mean to get close to the money? It means understanding and articulating very clearly the value that the client will receive when working with you, and equally important, what is at stake if they don't. Most coaches lead with what they do, their methodology, their process, their deliverables, and all of that is important, but it doesn't create a sense of urgency that will make the client want to say yes. What creates urgency is consequence, and consequence lives close to the money. Here are 3 questions I'd like you to think about when you are describing your offer, whether it is in a sales conversation, a proposal, or how you're describing your offer on your website. Question 1, what is the cost of inaction? What if the client keeps the status quo and does nothing? What happens then? What does that cost them? In revenue, in time, in peace of mind, in relationships, in their health? This is your most powerful question, because it makes the invisible visible, and it transforms your offer from being a nice to have to an absolute need to have. Question 2, what is the quantifiable ROI, even if it's hiding? I want to push back on the idea that some offers don't have a quantifiable ROI. In my experience, there's almost always a financial number hiding somewhere, even though the outcome looks like it's purely emotional or qualitative. And your job is to find it. Sometimes your client will help you find it if you ask the right questions. Other times you might need to do a little thinking yourself and present it to them. Either way, find the number, because it will change everything in your sales conversation. Question 3. What does your client value most, and are you speaking to it? Not every client values the same thing. Some are driven by revenue, but some are driven by legacy or by time or how they feel when they walk into a room. Your value story needs to speak specifically to what your client values most, not some generic version of value. When you get this right, pricing becomes almost irrelevant because you're speaking to what matters most to them. Now let me show you how these 3 questions play out in real situations. Lori coaches women who are owners of restaurants and vineyards. And think about that client profile for a minute. She's probably been running on adrenaline for years, and she loves what she's built, but she's probably exhausted and stressed, feeling like the business is running her versus her running the business. Lori's marketing materials described her offer beautifully, and she also talked about stress and being overworked, and the importance of work-life balance. All true and all very valuable. But here's what they didn't say. When a restaurant owner or vineyard owner is under a lot of stress, their key employees notice. And those key employees have options, and they could leave. And when key employees leave, quality of service often drops. And when quality of service drops, loyal customers can sometimes leave. And when loyal customers leave, well, I don't need to finish that sentence. The cost of inaction for Lori's clients isn't just stress. It is a business in decline, and that's the money. And that's what needs to be in the marketing materials. What would I add to Lori's proposal? Something like this. Without intervention, the cost of burnout for a business owner typically shows up as increased staff turnover, declining customer retention, and reduced revenue, often 20 to 30% over 18 to 24 months. My clients consistently report not just renewed energy, but measurable improvements in team stability and customer satisfaction within 90 days. Now, the price, regardless of what that may be, sits in a completely different context. It is no longer a wellness expense, but rather a business protection investment. Kelly coaches leadership teams at mid-sized startups, and she is exceptional at what she does. And she asked me to review a proposal for a potential client whose leadership team was really struggling. Misaligned priorities, poor communication, mounting tension. Her proposal outlined her coaching approach and her session cadence and her team assessment beautifully. But what it didn't do is answer the question that the prospect is likely asking silently, which is, why does it matter enough to justify the investment right now? So let's get close to the money on Kelly's offer. What is the cost of a dysfunctional leadership team at a startup? Let's look at this concretely. First, decision-making slows down. When a leadership team is not aligned, often what happens is decisions don't get made or they get slowed down. And this can be expensive for a startup because competitors move in and opportunities close down. Second, there's the cost of turnover. Gallup research consistently shows that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. A fractured leadership team creates a fractured culture, and replacing a mid-level employee costs up to 50 to 200% of their current salary. Third, and this is a big one for startups, it affects the cost of investor confidence. If a leadership team can't demonstrate cohesion and clear direction, it affects funding conversations, full stop. When Kelly's proposal leads with those consequences, it doesn't look like a coaching expense. It looks like the cheapest insurance policy that client will ever buy. What I told Kelly is, you have to get close to the money. Clearly outline the consequences, both qualitatively and quantitatively, of the leadership team not getting their act together. And this creates context for your fee. Let them do the math. Of course, to be able to implement this effectively, it begins with a great sales conversation. And a powerful question that Kelly could ask is, what do you think this is costing you right now in terms of decision-making and time and potentially loss of key employees who may be looking around? What is the cost right now, and what are the implications if this does not get addressed in the future? That question alone changes the entire dynamic because you're helping the client to calculate the cost themselves. And when Kelly presents her fee, that number is going to look very different. Now let's tackle what most coaches would see as the hardest situation, which is where the ROI is not that obvious. Imagine you're a presentation coach and you help executives communicate more effectively in a more compelling way. And it's beautiful work and truly transformative. But when someone asks what's the ROI of working with you, it can sometimes feel impossible to come up with a number. So let's run the 3 questions. Question 1, what is the cost of inaction? So if your client stays exactly where they are and they don't address their need for being a better communicator What's at risk there? Are they less effective in the boardroom? Are they missing opportunities for speaking engagements? Are they losing deals? That's not qualitative. That's a lost deal. That's a missed promotion. That's a speaking fee that they didn't earn. That's real money. Question 2, what is the hidden ROI? And this is where I push back with coaches who say, I can't really quantitatively talk about the ROI, because yes, you absolutely can. And it begins with the questions that you're asking in the sales conversation. For example, you might ask, what's the value of the deals that you've got in the pipeline next month? And if the answer is, let's say, 200,000, if this individual were to just increase their conversion rate by 20% through better presentation skills, that equates to $40,000. Another example of a question that you might ask to someone who has got their eye on a promotion is, what is the salary difference between your current role and the role you're wanting to be promoted to? And let's say they say it's 50,000. Well, if that executive presence skills gets them there 6 months faster, that's a difference of $25,000. And a final example of a question that I might ask is something like, so in your industry, what is the typical speaking fee for someone? And if they answered anywhere from 5 to 25,000, I might say, you told me that you were passing on those, and by not addressing your fear of public speaking, what is that really costing you? So in these situations, it can appear that the ROI is invisible. But if we ask the right questions in our sales conversations, we can get closer to the money. Question 3, what does this specific client value most? For an executive, it may be power and authority. For an entrepreneur, it might be closing more deals. For a thought leader, it could be about legacy and impact. The point here is that your value story needs to speak directly to their particular need and not be something generic like better communication. When you can say, the executives I work with typically see a measurable improvement in how they're perceived in the room within 60 days. And several have actually credited that shift with promotions and deal closures they attribute directly to the work that we do together. That's a value story. That's getting close to the money. Quick pause here. If you are sitting there thinking, maybe my offer is not close to the money and you need help applying this framework to your business, book a call with me. The link is below. So how do you actually present price in the context of value? Here's the language I teach. In a sales conversation, before you ever talk about investment, make sure that you have done the work to really understand what's at risk for the client. A question I love is, what would it mean for you personally or for your business if you stayed exactly where you are over the next 12 months? Let them answer and really listen, because what they say next is your value story in their language. And when you eventually present your price, it can sound something like, thanks so much for sharing that with me. Based on what you have shared so far and the impact on your team, the revenue at risk, what it's really costing you to have this unresolved, I want to walk you through what working together would look like and what the investment is. In the context of everything we've discussed, I think you'll find that it makes a lot of sense. You're not defending your price, you're actually contextualizing it, and it makes a world of difference. So how does this play out in a proposal? Well, you want to lead with your understanding of their needs and the consequences if they do not address them before presenting your solution. So structure it like this. First, outline your client's needs and situation. Second, outline what's at stake. Name the cost of inaction clearly and specifically. Third, present your solution and how it addresses what's at stake. And fourth, the investment. presented as a fraction of the value or risk you've just described. When your fee sits next to a $200,000 risk or a $500,000 opportunity, you don't have to justify your fee. The math does it for you. Before I wrap up, I want to share with you how this plays out in different kinds of niches, because I want you to see that this works pretty much anywhere. Women's brain health coach. The cost of inaction isn't just brain fog, it's diminished career performance, strained relationships, and a quality of life that declines year over year. Get close to that. A menopause coach. Women spend years struggling through symptoms that affect their sleep, their work, their confidence, and their relationships, often in silence. The cost of not addressing this is compounding daily. Your fee is not a wellness expense, it's a life quality investment. A school readiness coach for parents of toddlers. Parents know that the foundation built in the first 5 years shapes everything that follows. The cost of not investing in that foundation isn't visible today, but it shows up in struggles that are far more expensive to address later. Get close to that emotional and financial reality. In every single one of these, the money is there. You just have to get close to it. So let's recap. Getting close to the money means 3 things. 1, always answer the cost of inaction. What happens if your client does nothing? Name it specifically. 2, find the hidden ROI. It's almost always there. Ask the right questions and it will surface. 3, present your price in the context of value. Let your fee sit next to the risk or opportunity you've identified, and let the math speak for itself. Your price is not too high. Your value story just needs to catch up with it. Ask yourself, what would getting closer to the money mean for your business, your pricing, your close ratio, your revenue? If you want help getting your specific offer closer to the money, schedule a call with me. We'll take a look at your offer, your value story, and what might be hiding in it, so that you are never worried about presenting your price again. The link is below. I'll see you on the next one.